present. There he is. There he is.
Hi. Hi, good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. We're looking forward to hearing about making a couple of stations on the B and C line on Central Park West accessible. Obviously, due to the nature of Central Park West and the buildings, the fact that 81st and the 97th Street end of 96 have wide sidewalks makes them possible places for elevators. So, Alberto, take it away.
Sure. Thank you again, Brother Albert. Happy to be here with the team. I'm here joined by my colleague, Kana Irvin, from our C&D and team. She will walk us through the presentation today for both 81st Street and 96th Street. Both exciting stations and definitely full information, and love to take questions afterwards. So again, Kana, thank you.
If I could just jump in for a second, what we're going to aspire to, we may or may not achieve it, but we're going to aspire to letting you complete your presentation. Then we'll have questions and answers from the folks around the table, and then we'll open it up to community questions and comments. So with that, please take it away.
Thank you, Mark. So for your committee, would it be easier to take questions after each station presentation? So 81st will be first. You want Q&A after that, or do you want Q&A after both stations?
Let's kind of get all the way through, because there may be issues in common with the two stations. So why don't we do it all as efficiently as we can? And we thank you for being here, and I'm going to shut up now.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. I'll share my screen. Here you go. We will start with 81st Street. Wonderful. Okay, well, we have a very familiar face, Andrew. I'm surprised we even need to be here doing a presentation at all. I'm surprised that you haven't briefed them or briefed us on this project. So we're going to be presenting about two stations. We have 81st Street and we have 96th Street. We're really excited about these. These are part of ADA Package 5, which we awarded in December. This is a design build package of 13 stations across all 5 boroughs. And this just further proves how committed we are to system-wide accessibility here. This is also part of our $5.2 billion that we've committed in this current capital plan for ADA upgrades. And just to give you some reference, this capital plan has nearly 5 times the number of ADA commitments than the previous capital plan. So we're really ramping up here. We currently have 38 stations in construction, and this far we've completed 4. So we are full steam ahead with Package 5. And I guess really quickly, I guess I'll just do some shout outs. So, Alberto, obviously, we have ACOM here, our PMC, and we also have representatives from Judd Law on the call who can answer some more technical questions. Great. Okay. So I'll go over the project scope really quick. We will be constructing one new 3-stop elevator that provides access between the street, upper and lower platforms. We're also going to be creating one new ADA compliant street to platform staircase. And that's not an entirely new staircase. We are going to be showing you later in the presentation, but we're rebuilding that staircase that you're seeing here in the photo. We're also creating a new ADA raised boarding areas that will also have the platform tactile edge strips and some infrastructure improvements. There will be some track replacement along the lower platform. And whenever we create elevators where there aren't any at stations, we have to upgrade power. So we're going to be doing some power upgrades and some light structural work too. And you all know and love the beautiful mosaic artwork here. So we are very sensitive to that. All of the mosaic work will be either preserved or replaced in kind. And we are still in discussion with MTA Art and Design. And we're also going to be improving lighting and some wayfinding at the station. So our construction timeline, I think first I'll just address the asterisk that these dates are not yet finalized. These are approximate. And the reason that they're not confirmed yet, and when we have them confirmed, we will let you know. That's because, like I referenced earlier, this is a design build package. This is actually the biggest design build package that the MTA has awarded as of yet, and we're very excited about that. But that represents not just modernizing our physical station with ADA access, but we're also modernizing the way that we're doing these contracts, the way we're delivering these projects better and faster and cheaper, which is sort of MTA C&D's motto. So design build allows us to bring the contractor on earlier in the process and get them bought in on design rather than design bid build, where the design is finalized before construction begins. So this, represents a lot of benefits for the MTA and, of course, the taxpayers, because we usually, this is a great contracting tool and it helps us get projects delivered at a lower cost. So currently we are coordinating with local utilities, DOT, in terms of traffic flow, just city transit with some of the bus stops that are very close to this, this work site, and other agencies. That's ongoing. We will be installing MPT, which is the maintenance and protection of traffic. Those barriers will go up around June 3rd. We're just looking at early June. Demo, excavation, and heavy utility work that will occur shortly after we install MPT, which is, again, are those barriers to keep the work zone safe and separated. And then this project is slated to be substantially complete by 2026. Wonderful. So here you have the 2 MPT phases, and those represent the different stages in construction. And these 2 different stages, you can see that we shift the work zones around the site to accommodate just the different stages of work. Most notably, you can see that traffic will be slightly affected. Here we have the diagram of phase 1 on the left-hand side. So we're going to be staging in the parking lane. I believe that's on, the north side of Central Park West, and the Central Park West southbound direction. So that's going to be reduced to 1 lane to accommodate for that staging. And then for phase 2, we are going to be continuing staging in that parking lane there, and the traffic will flow normally around that. And I think I'm going to ask, who do we have on from Jedlah, or maybe Frank? Could talk a little bit about these plans. Alberto, do you know who we have from Jedlah here?
Chris, can you hear me?
Chris is on.
Oh, Chris. Oh, it just says Alberto. Sorry. Okay, great. So yeah, I have these 2 phases up here. If you could maybe make some notes on them that we didn't cover in the previous slide.
So the schematic you see on the screen is just the detail with the notes. We're currently working with DOT here to finalize the plan on how we're going to start our first MPT phase. The first MPT phase consists of relocation and protection of some existing utilities that are currently in the way. And, this schematic just shows how we're going to maintain the pedestrian crosswalks. At DOT, but between DOT and MTA right now, we're coordinating how to minimize the impacts all the crosswalks. It's in our contract to maintain all 4 crosswalks at all times. We're working on some sort of staging area, which is on the north side of 81st Street on Central Park West. The intention there is to take over the parking lane over there, about 100 to 150 feet, to so that we have some storage there for materials and equipment. And then if you go to page 2, this is just a continuation. This phase is going to be the phase in which lasts the longest throughout the construction of the project. This is for the demolition of the existing staircase, the construction of the future elevator, as well as the future staircase in this scenario. And as you can see through both phases, there is some impacts to traffic, but pedestrian sidewalks and pedestrian passageways are maintained throughout the project.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Chris. Just to run through some construction and service impact. So the diagram is very helpful. Here we have just some photos of the bus stop that's right next to the staircase, which is approximately here. So this shelter will be removed or relocated, temporarily, and this call box will also need to be relocated. The construction will largely be taking place during the DOT approved construction hours from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And when we do require evening work, this is just to limit the impact on rush hour traffic. So we shift it during a less busy time. We will notify the community well in advance when that does happen. Access will be maintained to the sidewalk, as Chris said, the crosswalks, and those bus stops. We will be relocating some water and gas pipes under Central Park West. And then this entrance, this is the staircase right here that will be demolished and shifted that way. So there will obviously be a time when that is open or closed for demolition, but the station entrance right here, sorry, we don't have a clear picture, that stairwell will remain open throughout the entire duration of the project. And so there will be some, limited occasions of some track work. And that's actually when we try to make the most of that, that station bypass or that track outage to do some of the work that would otherwise require us to do our own geo, our own track outage, things like when we do the ADA boarding area. We try to just, maximize the benefits that we're doing during one, customer inconvenience at a time. So lastly, just the station artwork. I did touch on this. This is approximately where the elevator will be landing. Whenever we do these projects, we do have an art component. Like I said, we're in communication with MTA Arts and Design because, like I said, because the design is not 100% finalized. I believe that we either just filed or we're about to submit 60% drawings. I think maybe Chris can confirm that after. But once everything is at 100% completion, we'll have a better understanding of where, which murals are going to be impacted. Right now, I think that we're going to be trying to expand the blue starry night tile. And whenever we impact some of the smaller tiles, I think in the mezzanine it's usually that MTA white tile, and then we have like the smaller animal, mosaics. So those will definitely be replaced in kind, but the larger ones sort of TBD there. Great. So you all know Alberto, of course. Again, my name is Connor Irvin. We have Deborah from ACOM and this project hotline and email. The hotline is just for non-emergencies, but if you do reach out, then we'll try to get back to you within 24 hours on the weekday. And you can feel free to send that around. That's a public hotline and email address.
Real fast, kind of.
Thanks, oh, go ahead, Alberto.
Chris, could you speak about the double shift component? If that's still an issue here with the rock demolition?
Yes, so at the current time, we're evaluating the schedule. Jadla bid this contract and MTA imposed 3 milestones for this project at different durations of the project. This falls under milestone 2, which is a very aggressive schedule for us to ensure that this station is completed on time with a mid-2026 duration. We're evaluating the need or the necessity of potentially having to go double shifts for a span of time at this station due to Manhattan's geological definition. There's a lot of Manhattan schist, which is the rock formation that the station currently sits on. At this time, we do believe that there will be some rock demolition underneath the station to expand the lower platform area. So as of right now, we are anticipating for there to be an approximate 2 to 3 month span where we will be working double shifts. That'll consist of 7 to 3 and then 3 to 10:30. During this time, rock demolition will take place during the daytime so that it will not impact, the late evening hours and the nighttime rush or people trying to go to sleep. So right now we're focusing on any heavy and loud construction activities from the hours of 7 to 5 with 5 o'clock to 10:30 consisting primarily of cleanup, prep work, and setting up for the next day ahead.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, because it was announced at last month's meetings, by Jami Torres Springer that all of these, or a great deal of these, accessibility projects are on hold pending the approval of congestion pricing. And I'm wondering if the package of 81st and 96th Streets are part of that hold, or if they were approved previously and they will be going ahead regardless.
No, this is in construction. So this was awarded in December. So this would not be the one on hold. More of like package 7 and others beyond.
69 are currently on hold.
Good to know. Thank you.
All right, there's been a request in the room to turn up the volume. This is as high as it goes.
Okay, other questions, Jay?
What is ACOM? That's
It's an
just a
infrastructure
contract.
Howard?
You mentioned that we have cost savings due to the way this is being bid. What is the cost of this project?
I don't know off the top of my head. Chris probably knows. I can get that for you though. I don't want to give you the wrong number.
But because it's design build, it's more economical. They've done a lot of design builds and they've saved money on every project. We get that at the board, so.
Don't they even have
A lot of the
ballpark?
saving,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the savings are in the minutia of the contracting process. Is a little bit of a long-winded explanation, but if you were to imagine if you're trying to build something and you have the designer and then you have the builder, with design build, you kind of marry those two companies a little bit much more than you would with design bid build. So in another project, actually, I think in Long Island City, it was a design build project because that design is sort of fluid, much more fluid than design bid build. And when we dig under the ground in New York City, a lot of these utilities are unmapped. We don't know exactly how big they are. And sometimes you don't know if that something is there until we are digging. And that's just a problem across the city. So in this particular project, they thought a water main was going to be for like, I don't know, 3 feet. And it turned out to be like 3 times that width. And they were able to work with the designer to just shift the elevator location by several feet. And that saved a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of manpower. Whereas if this were not design build and the design was finished and then it was given to the builder, we would have had to go back to the drawing board. And when we save time, we also save money. So that's a little bit a taste of why it's.
But you don't know what it's costing.
I
can get it
can
on.
easily look that up for you in a moment.
Okay.
They have to have it.
Keep
They
in
put
mind,
it out for
Jay?
keep in mind that the design of the Central Park's West Line is very different because it's platform upon platform. It's not spread out like many other stations are.
So we got a question.
I understand you're on an aggressive schedule and I see 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Is that 7 days a week? Is that including holidays or is it 365?
As of right now, we're looking at only Monday through Friday and only needing to go to double shifts for a very small period of time. Weekend work will only be consisting of geo work where we would be doing track work or work that would involve the right of way of the train. But as far as right now, the contract work does not require us to go 7 days or anything past what was previously mentioned.
Ken?
I thought we were gonna ask questions after vote.
We were, but here we are. So
How long will the south entrance be closed, do you think?
by south, you mean the southwest corner of 81st and, okay,
Right.
yeah.
The entrance will be
The
closed.
staircase?
Yes.
Okay, Chris.
The entrance here on 81st Street will be maintained. The staircase entrance will be closed, but the station will be always open and accessible.
Well, how would one use that entrance without using the staircase?
You have to use the northwest side.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but how long, what I'm asking is, there are a lot of people at rush hour. So I'm wondering for how long are people gonna have to pack into that one entrance? And exit?
Could I ask it a different way? Because I had the same question there. And I guess the way I would phrase the question is, since this is MTA doing this and MTA is also the subway, have we considered the need for staff, especially the crosstown bus stopping at that corner to access the BC. Have we considered the need for staff to redirect people either to the northwest corner or to another entrance underneath the museum? Because as Ken is pointing out, there's a significant volume of commuting traffic that goes from the crosstown bus to the subway there. So have we considered that in terms of either wayfinding or staff direction or some way to make sure that we don't pile articulated bus loads of people onto the narrowest of the staircases that lead to that platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. I imagine that we will be having those paper signs at the street level, directing people to use the entrance from across the street. We have an entire, accessibility team, customer comms team that drafts these. So I can, I'm happy to go to them and ask them what it exactly would look like and get back to you. And I think in terms of having those extra employees, that's what our station agents are for, and we're actually getting them out of the booth more. That's an initiative that has been very successful and has been very popular with customers. So, we give them scripts whenever they have anything that, deviates from day-to-day activity, and we'll make sure that they are, briefed about this project.
Okay, were you finished?
I'd still like to get answer to whether you know how long that one entrance the staircase will be shut down.
As of right now, off the top of my head, I believe it's 6 to 7 months.
Okay.
And can you give us a duration of phase 1 and phase 2? Each one?
Phase 1 is going to be a short-term phase, as it's only there to assess the steam main that's currently on Central Park West and turns on 81st Street and to be supported. Phase 1 would consist of approximately a month and a half before phase 2 goes into play, and phase 2 will be the predominant phase throughout the entire construction process. One other thing to keep in mind that there is another entrance in front of the Museum of Natural History for access from the street level. So there's still multiple points of entry for the subway system, even with the one staircase on the southwest corner being closed.
And the majority of folks using that station are taking the bus from the east side, so the northwest side will remain open, and that's the one that all of them use. So,
And I point out that a lot of people don't know about the museum entrance. I usually forget about it.
That's why we need wait.
So that's,
Yeah.
and now we need someone there to direct people, should they?
So to speak to that,
Yeah, we sure do.
we do have a team that comes out and assesses the customer counts and all of that. So that will be part of this project before we start to make sure the wayfinding, as you pointed out, is accurate and helpful for folks as they navigate this site.
And I'm going to jump in with one question, and we'll move this along. Nicole Painter from the Columbus Avenue bid had the same thought as me, so credit to Nicole. But I'm interested in hearing the coordination between the Museum of Natural History staff, especially they have a whole transportation staff there, and your construction team. There are now 5.5 million visitors a year there, including virtually every middle school student in the tri-state area during the months of April, May, and June. Yeah. So that's an awful lot of, and I know that across the street from where this location is going in, and don't get me wrong, I'm delighted, thrilled beyond words that this project is going forward. But there are there was a program that was in part orchestrated by Community Board 7, along with all of the other folks, to have bus layovers and bus delivery areas across Central Park West. So they'll be coming across the south crosswalk and probably right smack into the construction zone. So again, I'm thinking that so have we coordinated with AMNH on this? And are there ways in which we can make sure that all those school children get to the museum safely and back?
No, very good question. We've briefed the museum several times at this point, and we remain in communication, including their peak times and schedules and all that. So we definitely have that open line of communication with the museum. But of course, we welcome any assistance you can give us as a board as well to make sure that these young children can definitely enjoy the museum as well.
And also, I think you can see, I think it's here, but that there's that U shape kind of like a lane or where the buses usually pull up for the field trips. This will always remain open, so the work zone will not encroach on that bus exit.
That's the driveway to the Rose Center, and
Mhm.
those buses deliver students actually underground in the parking facility, and then exit, as you mentioned. There's a second area in which students access the museum, and this is usually the older students who can cross a crosswalk without 15 chaperones. And that's the part that I'm addressing. Community Board 7 would be delighted to convene meetings and make sure that y'all are in communication. We have no expertise to give you, just coordination, and we're happy to do that.
Coordination is going to be a critical component here. We have had in this month 2 meetings with the museum.
Yes, I'm working in Greenwich Village, so it's the deep south, right? Okay.
Let's move to the 96.
Shoot,
Wait,
folks,
Chris,
why don't we go to the
I think
next
Chris
one?
was gonna make a note about that coordination real quick.
I just wanted to hone that point in. Coordination is going to be extremely critical in this location. As you guys mentioned, it's highly populated. There is a lot of traffic, vehicular, but also pedestrian traffic due to the museum, the planetarium. We've had in the last month 2 meetings with the museum. We intend to keep very good communication. The whole course of this project, communication is going to be key, as well as coordinating with everybody here. So we understand that, and that's definitely a point that's going to be critical to uphold throughout this entire construction process to ensure that everything is done safely for not just the construction workers, but also pedestrians, vehicles in this area coming in and out. So we take that to heart, and that is going to be a very important factor moving forward.
Okay, are we ready for
96th Street?
Very good.
I think so. Okay. Let me just pull this up.
What's different up there?
Looks lovely. I loved it.
It's the southern part of it.
Oh, yeah, very far.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we will roll right into the next one. So as you know, this is also part of package 5. So running through the project scope, this station will be one 3-stop elevator providing access between street and both upper and lower platforms. We're going to be refurbishing an existing set of stairs right here, and also creating new ADA raised boarding areas complete with the tactile strips on the edge. Some infrastructure improvements. You see that we're going to be doing the head house here, so we are going to be bumping out the curb. And that'll also be, improving pedestrian visibility a little bit around this side of the street. We're also going to be doing some utility work. Again, like I said, we have to do some sort of power upgrade whenever we install elevators, and some light track replacement on the lower level. This is just a bird's eye view of that image. We have that curb bump out. This is where the elevator will be landing on the street level. And it will encroach on, I believe, 1 or maybe 2 parking spots here. So just like last presentation, we are coordinating with utility companies, with DOT and other agencies. That's ongoing. Similar timeline to 81st Street. MPT will be installed around early June, and shortly after we'll be doing demo and excavation and utility work. And this is also slated to be completed by 2026. So here we have one of 2 phases of MPT. So you can see that we're staging in that red Oklahoma shaped box. That's on 97th Street west of Central Park West. We have the temporary crosswalk and curb ramp. These 2 lanes of traffic on 97th Street will be open, and the right lane is running through an existing parking lane temporarily. The bus stops along Central Park West will be maintained, as well as the station will be maintained during construction. And really the only difference here is what I've bolded. You can see it's just very, very minor. So here in our second phase of MBT, we are restoring the crosswalk and curb ramp here. So running through the construction and service impacts. Again, station access maintained through construction. That's a requirement of our contract. That's for every station in this package. We are going to be monitoring noise and vibrations during construction. That is just standard practice for any construction project. We always monitor those levels for safety. We are going to be having to do some stair closures while we refurbish those stairs, so we can make them new and up to ADA code. And during some phases of construction, we will also be requiring some evening work. We will come to the community board well in advance when we have that schedule set in stone. And again, a lot of the evening work we do to minimize the impacts on the commuters and the residents around, so that we're not doing construction during rush hour. And similarly to what I pointed out on the last presentation, that track work during weekday and weekend overnights, that allows us to stack platform level repairs so that we're just making the most of those GOs, general orders, which is when operations planning coordinates with companies and contractors to basically remove service. And we're wrapping this one up too. This is the same contact information, and I'll open it up to questions.
Since most of this is happening at the 97th Street end, I assume there'll be signage directing people to the 96th Street entrance, which likely will have little impact.
Yes, we'll have a similar, the customer comms team drafts those like paper signs that they tape to the station entrance like poles. And I'm happy to reach out. I'll ask them what it looks like and I can send those to you. Like what sort of signage they'll have to direct folks.
Right. Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Jay.
Same question I had on 81st Street. Do we have a ballpark figure for this project?
So I will
also direct my question to the people that bid on it and obviously had to submit numbers.
You're very baseball oriented tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, the
Do we have
award
any
to
numbers?
Judlow was like approximately 577, yeah.
The entire budget for the entire project, I don't have that information, but I'm sure Connor can provide it after the meeting.
What was that first number?
Approximately 577 million for the entire package for 13 stations.
Multiple stations.
13 stations. Wow.
13 stations.
Correct, 13 stations across all the boroughs.
Okay, Ken, let's keep moving.
Um,
We'll go around.
I have a few questions. One, I assume the north side entrance will remain open April 10th?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of your sentence.
The north side entrance on 97th will remain open?
Yes.
Yeah.
Here.
Sorry, the south side entrance on 97th will remain open. We're evaluating the northwest corner. That will be potentially shut down for a period of time due to the expansion of the mezzanine area.
Could you say that again? Could you say that again?
There's two entrances on 97th. There's the northwest side and the southwest side. Southwest corner will remain open throughout the entire duration of the project. The northwest will be temporarily shut down to facilitate the expansion of the lower platform level, also approximately 6 months.
Okay. And your diagram of where it's going to go, in the roadbed, it looks like the elevator and the construction actually will provide some really welcome traffic calm for cars coming off the transfers, because right now they come off the transfers and they see through, which is 2 lanes, and they see 3 lanes ahead of them, and some of them really take advantage of that. And this is going to force, traffic into 2 lanes, which is definitely gonna calm it. If DOT is listening, I hope they pay attention to, what goes on there during construction and consider making that permanent, something like that permanent. And also, are there, since it is in the roadbed, are there any protections, for the elevator structure itself in case it gets struck by a car?
As of late, the DOT has gone away from bollards protecting elevators. What we've done now is we've adopted crash walls behind the granite on anywhere that's traffic facing. We have approximately, I think it's 2'6" or 3'4" crash wall that could withstand a car or truck impact. So it will be protected from on the traffic side, on vehicle side, from a potential impact.
Great. And then my only other question is how do you make a staircase ADA compliant? I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah,
ADA compliant
that
is what?
speaks specifically to the height of each stair and the tread. So it's
Well,
obviously
yeah,
it's not part of the
Codes.
stair-free path of travel that we typically think of when we think of ADA, but this tailors more to folks who have low vision or other disabilities like that. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong there.
That's absolutely correct. It's not just for people in need of a wheelchair, but also visually impaired, hearing impaired. The staircase, the ADA has parameters for staircase rises and runs, the length of the step, as well as the height of the step. It has to be consistent within 1/4 inch from step to step. And it can't skew, or sorry, 1/8 inch, it can't skew more than 1/4 inch. And there's sort of specific standards for the steps. Like a step can't be more than 7 inches, and the handrail has to be at a specific height from that step. So those codes will be ensured that they're met.
Thank you.
Chris, could you
Thank
speak? Chris, could you speak to how tall the elevator will be, the hours of construction, and also like noise expectation for residents near the construction site, including noise mitigation that we're going to do?
As of right now, the schedule dictates only one shift, 7 to 3:30, 7 to 4 o'clock, regular, our regular working hours. There is some rock excavation in this area due to just the geography, geology of Manhattan. So there will be some rock demolition. The current station stops at the upper mezzanine, upper platform level, and this elevator will provide you a stop at each 3 levels, which means we have to expand inside the rock layer, the lower platform level. So there will be some rock demolition. As of now, we don't believe the need for double shifts, but that may arise as we progress. If it is deemed that double shifts would be necessary, we'll make sure to get together with Alberto and Kana so that we can provide notice to everybody prior to that. As far as the elevators are approximately 8 feet tall. However, there is special guardrail and refuse place space above it to ensure that an individual or maintenance person, mechanic, doesn't get crushed. So there is a height increase for that, as well as because these elevators are traction elevators, all the equipment, the rope, all of that is actually above head. So the structure becomes about 17 to 22 feet tall. Once all of those components are added on together, the proper space there for maintenance, as well as the equipment.
Thank you for giving us an estimate of the budget. 577 million that comes for 13 stations. I said, if my math is correct, it's about 44+ million per station. I'm sure all stations are not equal, but that was my rough back of the napkin math. The question I have, I saw some renderings, but I wondered if you have more of a street level elevation or something that we can see what the anticipated end product will look like on the street level. Yeah. I think we just lost the signal.
Not behind you. We've got the signal behind you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say the last half of your sentence again?
I I think the last half was, did we lose you? No, I wanted to know if you have any street level renderings that give the public a better idea of visually what it's going to look like on the street level, and any other renderings that are helpful. I know I saw some of them before, but I didn't see.
Yeah, I think
assume you have.
we should have some. I will get those to you. I think they've
Oh, tonight would have
been trickling in. Huh?
Tonight would have been the night. We have people watching, but we appreciate if you send it to us and we can put it back on our website.
Website,
Yes,
so
we can
everyone
go
will be
on the
able to see it, so.
Thank you.
I mean, it would have been.
Yeah,
Okay.
is Frank or Deborah on the call? I think they've been handling the renderings. That's something that maybe they can
Yeah,
answer too.
I can share some of the renderings if you'd like. I
Yeah,
have them
please.
ready on screen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, because mine is loading right now. So
Yeah, they're big
so
files.
great.
Just keep in mind these renderings are still they're preliminary renderings.
Not final product.
Correct. Just so
understand.
everyone's aware, because this is a design build, when we won the project in December, we received 30% design. At this point, we've split up the station or the project into 3 bundles, all 3 bundles, and they're geographically broken down. 60% designs have been submitted, and they're under review with all the different agencies and departments within MTA. And we're also working on submissions of our 90% designs in the next 4 or 5 weeks, which takes us into middle of June, with 100% design scheduled for end of August, beginning of September. And that's just because we have 3 different sets of submissions for those. So we anticipate having the design completed by September. And so, this is a rough draft of what these renderings look like. And Frank, if you're having an issue, I can share it as well.
Yeah, they should be on screen now.
Nope.
I still-
not.
Oh.
So Alberto has to take down his, there you go.
There you go. And this isn't the best
Okay.
of the renderings, but
Okay, and then there's that crash wall that goes around the outside of it.
it's correct. It's behind the granite.
Okay, all right. Okay, are there questions in the room? Only 12. Okay. So let's just go around. We're gonna ask you to be, first of all, we're gonna ask you to ask a question, not make a statement. And we're gonna ask you to get to it. So, we'll start with you, sir. Please give us your name as you're jumping in.
My name is Jeffrey. The question I actually had is I've seen presentations does a very good job of showing what's going on, like sort of at the elevator and street level. I didn't see a lot of detail about what's happening at platform level. So the question I have is, are there plans in place to especially raise the platform level to be train doors better? And also, do you foresee there being any potential problems with structural columns along the platform getting in the way of the designated doors for wheelchair access? Is public hearing? I mean, at home. Yeah.
I had a really hard time understanding that. I don't know.
I think
It is
the
very
que-
muffled.
Yeah, I think the question
what we're
was,
gonna
are there plans to raise the platform at platform level for ADA and related items?
Okay, we're gonna have, so our speakers in the room, we're gonna ask you one by one as we call up to come up to the, either here or the chair over there, where you can speak more directly into our friend the owl.
Okay. All right, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
All right, so go ahead and ask your question again.
All right, so the question, so it's a 2-pronged question, because you do a good job of showing what the details of the plan are at street level. I didn't see a lot of detail as to what they look like at platform level. So the question I'm asking is, are there plans as part of this to raise the platform level to better match train doors? And as well, do you foresee there being any potential problems in the middle of the train where designated accessibility areas are on trains where platform pillars may get in the way? That's the question.
So at all stations where ADA accessibility is being brought, it is a requirement to address the platform edge to ensure that it does match with the sill of the elevator train. The ADA path of travel is designated by the conductor board, and the ADA boarding zone is extended 40 feet, 20 feet in both directions of that area, with also the transition area. So it's approximately a 50-foot zone encompassing an entire train car.
Okay.
Great. Keep in mind, there are 4 car types serving these stations, and the doors don't all line up in the same place. So It
Fair,
depends.
well, fair enough, but
Yeah.
fair enough, but the two doors like next to conductor's area tend to be in pretty similar positions. Anyway, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, while we're asking the next person to come up, I'm gonna unmute Gemma Stevens, who has a question online. We'll kind of go back and forth to try to keep this ball rolling. Hang on a second, sir. Gemma Stevens, if you have a question for our panel. You should be able to unmute. So much for my efficiency.
Y'all can't do it.
Okay, sir, you're ready, go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Sidney Gerson. Question is a little for clarification on the numbers that were quoted. Sir, I think you mentioned something pertaining to multiple stations, 10 or 12 stations, or is it the 2 stations that we're talking about for $577 million?
13 stations, the entire package. Yeah,
It wasn't clear.
not 1 or 2, thankfully.
And then secondly, pertaining to the construction and maintenance following that, is there any kind of estimation on the cost of maintaining these elevators following its completion?
In addition to the new design build that these projects are undertaking, it is actually the elevator installer's responsibility to maintain. It's included in the existing construction budget that the MTA has for this project. The elevator installer will also be maintaining these elevators. I believe it's 10 years with an option to extend for an additional 5, or 15 with additional option for 5. And that's all included in the or was included in the 2023 budget for this project, overall budget that the MTA had in place.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, one more time I don't see Gemma Stevens anymore online, and I don't see any other hands raised online.
Mark, I voted them.
Can you hear me? This is Hugh speaking on behalf of Gemma, if you can hear me.
Go ahead, sir.
No, I just wanted to double check. I think you covered it just now, but yeah, we live right by where the construction would be on the corner of 97th. In terms of the hours of construction, I think you said 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, with the potential for an extended shift. We just wanted to double check on that because obviously it'd be very disruptive if there's any work at night.
As of right now, it is looking like 7 to 4 a.m. Mondays, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Fridays. We're evaluating the need for a double shift at this current time. It does not look like we would need to extend the second shift till 10:30 at night. But if it were to come, that need to arise, we'll make sure to communicate that with the community board and the MTA. And we always prioritize all heavy activities to be conducted during working hours, with leaving those additional hours at the end of the day for prep work and quieter activities, so that we can streamline the process. It may be for loading out debris, but it would not be any heavy demolition or significantly noise generating activities.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I see a hand raised from Councilmember Gail Brewer's office online. I'm trying to.
Hi.
You're on.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cynthia from Councilmember Brewer's office. A couple of questions for the panel. Is there also an outreach being done to businesses, maybe through the bids for businesses in the area that might be impacted? Additionally, where do people, if they have a complaint regarding noise or other issues related to the construction, where are those sent to? Should that be done through 311 or somebody else? And then additionally, are there any trees or lights that will be impacted on those streets?
So in terms of outreach, we do welcome the bid. We can talk to the bid about that concern. I did outreach to the local residences this morning, gave them my card and information who to reach out to. But also at the end of the slide, we do have information for myself, the project team, along with email and phone number. So that could be information that can reach out to us that way.
Okay, when you say residences, you mean the buildings that are just like the co-ops, rentals, condos, all of those buildings in the area?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alberto.
Thanks. Steve, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Steve Anderson from the Upper West Side Coalition, and most importantly, from the Block Association from Central Park West to Columbus. And already at that corner, it is a catastrophe every day with congestion and danger going on, including every bus that goes into the museum parking lot has to go in and come out and then go back and go in and come out, including right adjacent to where you're talking. Of course, this is an essential project. That's not the issue. But this is a catastrophe before you start the project. And what I'm suggesting to you is that DOT and NYPD and traffic enforcement have to be part of this as ongoing management of this issue, or we're going to find ourselves with regrets. Why didn't we do this the right way? When some stroller or some family or one of us who are senior citizens, there are hundreds of us who live on the block and thousands who walk on the block. It is that important. This is not some side street. This is not an insignificant spot in our community. And you must have a plan to ensure that it's better controlled than it is now. And you got to take a look at what's going on now to get a sense of the activity level that there is there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. I see, I'm gonna go next online while we wait for the next person to come up. I'm gonna allow Sue Landesman, who I believe is a neighbor, at the 96th Street, 97th Street location. Susan, if you wish to, speak, go ahead now with the question.
Okay, thank you. Well, the two questions, maybe you've already addressed, but how much noise will there be for the people living on the corner of 97th and Central Park West?
Sorry. Exactly how much, I'm not sure I can provide that answer. We are currently installing noise monitors right now to gauge a baseline. The DEP and New York City Transit, the MTA, have very specific restrictions on the allowable amount of noise in an area. There are certain parameters that need to be held, not just MTA standards, but also DEP standards. If decibel levels hit a specific level, it is a requirement for us to provide mitigation methods such as dampening, the dampening protections around it. So if any piece of equipment or any activity is too noisy or creates an issue, we have immediate sensors that allow us and bring that to our attention, and we would have to reevaluate that. We are looking into using noise blankets to dampen equipment such as generators or compressors if at all necessary during construction. A lot of the work taking place will be within the station. So all of our barricades, for example, will have those noise dampening blankets on the inside to ensure that the pedestrians and public do not get impacted by that noise. And a lot of the heavy work is actually going to be happening from below the existing station. So that excavation work that we talk about, that would be the noisiest part of the impact, is going to be approximately 30 feet below the street level. So we are looking at different ways of dampening that before it hits the street level.
Can I ask you a question? Would that destabilize the building, the foundations of the building? Because I live in a high rise. And
okay, so that's a fair question. Let's have an answer.
So it is a requirement for us to provide vibration and settlement monitors. So in the upcoming weeks, we will be reaching out to adjacent properties to do pre-construction photographs and surveys by a third-party engineer, as well as installing prisms on buildings that may be impacted by the line of influence, so that we can monitor those in real time and watch them for any need of settlement. Another thing to keep in mind is that any supportive excavation that we do is designed by a professional engineer, signed and sealed and stamped. So there are many levels of safety factors that go into this.
All right, thank you. We're going to take one from the room here. I'm looking at the clock. I don't mean to rush anybody, but I'm rushing everybody. Please. I want to talk at the. You'll wait your turn.
My name is Susan Simon.
Thank you.
And I am on the board of 370 Central Park West. Well, yeah, I'm on the board of 370 Central Park West, and also the founder of the Central Park West Neighbors Association. Let me be clear. that elevator is 20 or 25 feet from 370 Central Park West. I want to make it known here that early on we were concerned, not that we didn't want an elevator, we were concerned where it would be placed. And we reached out to the MTA with a letter with quite a few signatures on it. We wanted to be part of the process. We never heard back from anyone. I have been in contact with the Transportation Committee in the past. I was told that the elevator a while ago was going to be placed on the north of 97th Street, where there's quite a bit more room between the street and the building. I would like to know how this decision was made. Our building is over 100 years old. We would be very afraid of possible engineering problems. We also have a subway station on 97th Street abutting our building. We have 3 buses which stop in front of our building. And we have the Children's Museum, which has not begun building yet on the other side of us. So I have to ask, as an active citizen in this city, how a decision like that could have been made without any input from our building and leaving us with, frankly, a headache. We have first floor apartments on that corner. You could practically touch us.
Okay, so those are the questions. Please, is there an answer? Thank you.
Okay, so I will first, I guess, pass it to Chris to talk about the design and why this was designed the way it is, for efficiency and, just for the specs of the area. And then maybe we can pass it to Alberto about the letter. I had not seen a letter, but so I'm apologies. I don't think it came across C&D's desk, but why don't we start with Chris?
As for the location of the elevator, moving it to the north side of the street is relatively impossible. As of right now, we are hugging the north side of the existing mezzanine. As you mentioned, the station does abut or comes very close to abutting the building on the south side of 97th Street. With the schematic right now, we are going on the northern half of that mezzanine. Any further up would be completely shutting down that staircase on the northwest side. So the MTA and the design builder have done the best to separate ourselves from the property line of the building, as well as moving as far north as possible to provide a adequate sidewalk and distance from the building.
Is there anybody on the Zoom who can answer the question as to why the letter was not responded to?
I can look into that in terms of where the letter is and was there a response drafted. So that was before I started, so I will definitely look into that.
What's the letter sent approximately? About a year ago. And it was sent by our board president, and a number of signatures on it. I know.
Okay.
It's a done deal.
I mean, Alberto and I certainly started much after that, but if you forward that to us, we'd be happy to look into it, and we can draft something for you. Yeah.
Right, can definitely get your
copy
response to your letter.
And please copy the response. Okay, let's keep ourselves moving here. So pardon me, I'm gonna butcher this name, Shakhnovskiy, is that correct? Shakhnovskiy, if you wish to ask a question, now's the time. You need to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Hi, my name is Shalom. First of all, I have to congratulate the MTA that you are doing the right thing to put in the elevator. But I happen to, like Susan, live in the same building, so we'll have to live through construction on both sides of the building. But I I do have this same question, which is that, I mean, if you look at what's here, you know, you just happen to pick the narrow sidewalk to work on to put the elevator in. So you know, I understand there are constraints, but you do need to consider how we are going to use this place. So thank you for that.
Okay, is there I mean, it sounds like the design is set, but is there a response that you can give? I think I heard earlier that you had to align with things below the surface. Is that why it's where it is?
It's actually, I mean, it's moved as far north as possible. I'm trying to get a confirmation of the actual sidewalk. The current sidewalk, yes, is narrow, but when the final condition, that sidewalk is significantly bumped out. That parking lane is taken out. So the elevator almost sits in the parking lane where it is right now. And the entire sidewalk maintained in its current position actually expanded a little bit. I'm just trying to see if I can find a drawing that I could just quickly share, but it doesn't have the dimensions that I would need to be able to show how it looks. If I can share real quick, maybe this will help. How do I share on this? Share. If you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
I think that's the answer. I think we need to see the diagram again. I want to keep us moving here because we're an hour into the meeting and we're on item 1. So I'm going to call Mr. Daniels and then, okay, here it is real quick, guys.
As you can see, that existing sidewalk is bumped out significantly, so the elevator is spaced away from the property line of the building.
Okay. All right, thanks. That may be partial answer to your question too. Okay, Mr. Daniels, you're up, and then we're gonna, and I think that's gonna be it. Yeah.
Okay, I represent a lot of people on the Upper West Side, but nothing formal. What about safety issue? I mean, crime is underreported. How are you going to keep people that don't belong in the elevator out of the elevator? I mean, it's nice that you'll have the elevator.
All right, that's an operational issue. This is a conversation about actually building it.
Right, but you want to.
Okay, this is off topic. Thank you for raising it, but we're gonna keep ourselves moving. Okay, so I don't think there's anything more to do on this item other than to say thank you to MTA for coming to us and for a very complete presentation. We do hope to have answers to those few things that were open before. And we would very much appreciate receiving a digital copy of the presentations that you just gave us. There are going to be folks who will want to study them. I know I want to study the areas that you've laid out for the staging areas for this, because this is obviously just the side of a battleship in terms of things that are going to require a footprint. So please send that to us and go with our thanks. We're going to move on to item number 2. Well, 2B, I guess it is.
Yes, it's
Andrew, take it away.
Presentation by DOT on making the 96th Street crosstown bus much speedier. I believe we have DOT representatives online to speak about this.
Can we do a time frame on it?
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Before I get started, would somebody be able to make my colleague from the MTA, Joe Charmonti, a panelist, please?
I made him a panelist earlier. He rejected, but I'll.
Could you do it again, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's Colleen Chatterton from DOT. Thank you so much for having us this evening.
Hi, Colleen. Okay, take it away.
All right. Sharing my screen. Hopefully you can all see this PowerPoint.
There we go. Great.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Leorin Evans. Thank you for having me and thank you for your attention. I'll be presenting about 96th Street bus priority and safety improvements. So first I'll go over some background and context on the project, then walk through the proposal, cover a summary and next steps, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So DOT is proposing bus improvements and safety improvements on 96th Street because of high ridership, There are 2 bus routes that use this corridor, the M96 and M106, and they have a 15,500 average weekday ridership combined. There's also high frequency on this bus during peak hours. Buses are scheduled as frequently as every 2.5 minutes. Bus speeds are also very slow, as low as 4 miles per hour during peak hours. Injuries are also high on the corridor. Over the past 5 years, there have been almost 400 injuries on the 96th Street corridor, including 44 people who were killed or severely injured. So along 96th Street, there are about 40,000 residents. Most households do not own a car, and at 74%, and 68% of commuters use public transit or walk or bike to work. On the east side, 96th Street borders a Tier 1 DOT priority investment area, determined by socioeconomic makeup and level of previous DOT projects. So citywide, bus riders are more likely to be lower income than people who drive private vehicles, making this project a matter of transportation equity. So some previous DOT projects on 96th Street include the Columbus Avenue protected bike lane, the First Avenue bus and bike lanes, safety improvements at West End, Broadway, and Madison, as well as bus and bike lanes on 2nd Avenue, the Amsterdam Avenue bike lane, as well as the Central Park West protected bike lane. And on the right here, you have before and after photos from the Broadway improvements, which should look familiar to many of you. Earlier this month, DOT announced efforts to improve transportation access to and through the Central Business District to complement the implementation of congestion pricing by the MTA. There are 37 new projects in development for 2024 and 2025 to better connect uptown to the Central Business District via transit and biking. The image below the text is a map of some of these projects that are in the development phase, including 96th Street. So the M96 runs from First Avenue to West End Avenue, and the M106 overlaps on the transverse and on the west side. It also, provides destinations on the east side and on 106th Street. So we have that overlap. There are many major destinations around the corridor. Just to touch on a few, there are lots of subway lines and bus routes that the M96 and M106 connect to. There are also hospitals, parks, and much more. I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Joe Charmante from MTA.
Okay, hi everyone. You could hear me okay, hopefully?
Sure can, thank you.
Okay, good. So I'll just briefly go over ridership and speeds on the M96. So average weekday ridership on the 96th Street is 14,900, which includes the M96 and the M106 portion on 96th Street. And this ranks 3rd in crosstown routes by ridership in Manhattan. Most riders are traveling between the east and the west sides. Almost 6,000 people per day ride in each direction going through Central Park. And the map on the bottom there just indicates boardings by stops. So you can see on the west side, there's heavy ridership and heavy boardings. Oh, and also buses are scheduled every 2.5 minutes during the AM and PM peaks. So it's a fairly frequent service, actually very frequent service.
Subway, what's that?
Okay, go to the, okay, and on bus speeds, the bus speeds obviously are slow throughout the corridor. If you're a rider of that bus, you would know that. They're especially slow on the east side and around Broadway and Amsterdam on the west side. And this lower, the map on the lower half indicates the speeds. The red lines are the slowest speeds, which are actually under 4 miles per hour. And it goes up to some areas have over 8, like in the transverse, but certainly not on the Upper West Side. That's that for my end.
Thanks, Joe. So a note on traffic safety. I mentioned earlier that there's a high number of crashes on the corridor. Recent projects have improved safety on the corridor, but there's still a high number, which needs to be addressed. So because 96th Street is in the top 10% of most dangerous streets citywide. So this chart shows total crash injuries organized by mode and severity.
Okay.
So looking at the average weekday hour in the 5 to 6 p.m. representative hour, traffic speeds are slower getting across the avenues and a bit faster going through the transverse. As for volumes, they're highest in the transverse and lower on the avenues. So overall, the project's goals are to improve bus service by prioritizing transit in the roadway and increasing bus speeds and reliability to strengthen this uptown crosstown connection. Safety is also a priority for the project, so we're including pedestrian safety in the design and the outreach process. I'll just make a quick note about bicycles. Although this is not a bicycle project, we're not proposing a bike lane on 96th Street right now. DOT is studying the area to see where we might be able to potentially have a future east-west bike facility at a future time. So now I'll go through the proposal. The overall concept is the offset bus lane. So
yeah, well, I'll Zoom too, because they're having some construction in
If you're not
our
presenter,
neighborhood.
could you please mute?
So
okay,
I can talk.
So at the top right,
Sorry about that.
That's all right. The top right shows the existing layout of 96th Street. So 3 lanes in each direction, including a parking lane on each side and 2 travel lanes. The offset bus lane proposal maintains a parking lane, implements a bus lane in each direction offset from the parking lane, and 1 travel lane in each direction. The benefits of the offset bus lane are that it improves bus speed and reliability by allowing the bus to travel without being blocked by congestion or parked or standing vehicles in the lane. It also maintains that curb access for parking, truck loading, and other passenger drop-off and pickups. Overall, the offset bus lane maintains a traffic flow for other vehicles while prioritizing the bus and traffic. So you may be familiar with the offset bus lanes from around the city. 2 examples that I'll point us to are 21st Street in Queens, which saw AM peak bus speeds increase by 10% and saw injuries decrease by 8% after implementation. And on Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, bus speeds increased by up to 19%. And injuries decreased by 24%. Here's a more detailed view of existing conditions on 96th Street. So the typical layout, the 3 lanes in each direction that I mentioned, with buses pulling to the curb at the bus stop to pick up passengers. But throughout the block, buses travel in mixed traffic, which is where a lot of the bus speed and reliability issues come in. So for the proposal, the typical offset bus lane is shown in this rendering. So you have the bus lane painted red offset from the parking lane, and the bus pulling to the curb at the bus stop to pick up and drop off passengers. We also are proposing to paint the bus stop red itself, so that to indicate to drivers and other people not to block the bus stop. Parking and loading is maintained throughout the block after the bus stop. And these offset bus lanes would be in effect at all times, 24 hours, 7 days a week. This concept is being considered throughout the design, so I figured I'd take a moment to explain this design, which we often implement at intersections with heavy left turning volumes. So the offset bus lane can shift to the curb at the intersection to make space for this left turn bay. So vehicles that would like to turn left can queue in this space and allow through traffic to continue straight without having to wait behind them. So this improves safety overall by reducing conflict between the different traffic movements, and also maintains a better flow for getting cars through the intersection. I'll also point out the hardened center line, which is shown with this yellow and black rubber speed bump on the center line, which is a turn calming treatment to get cars that are turning left to slow down as they approach the crosswalk. And we are considering this design at Central Park West, as well as Park Avenue, Lexington Avenue, and 3rd Avenue. Another aspect that we're proposing in the project is to lengthen some of the bus stops that currently can't accommodate 2 arrivals at once. There are a few bus stops on the corridor that are below our standard, and we are proposing to bring them into up to standard. So there are 4 locations that we're looking at. The eastbound bus stop on West 96 in Amsterdam, both bus stops at 96 in Columbus, and the bus stop on Central Park West between 97th and 96, which would be the one closest to the new elevator. The idea behind lengthening the bus stops is to allow both the M96 and the M106 to access the bus stop at the same time. All the bus stops have both routes stopping at them on the west side. So we want to, reduce conflict between those 2 buses and prevent buses from blocking traffic while they may be waiting to access the bus stop. This allowing this would provide more space for riders to wait for the bus, to board and depart the bus, and also, to not conflict with oncoming or with traffic, with general traffic while waiting for the bus to get in and out of the stop. Another treatment we're proposing is a bus queue jump signal. So queue jump signals allow buses to get a head start as they approach the intersection. They get a bus only signal before the light turns green, so they get ahead of the queuing vehicles that are, traveling through the intersection, but also any turning vehicles. You may be familiar with the leading pedestrian interval, which is a head start for pedestrians that we've implemented in many locations. This is basically a time in the signal setting that is only for pedestrians to establish themselves into the intersection before they need to start contending with turning vehicles, which has a big safety improvement. At intersections that already have this pedestrian phase, we're able to implement the bus only signal as well, because they'd be going at the same time in the signal cycle. So that is the case at 96th Street and 3rd Avenue. There's already a pedestrian phase, so we'd be benefiting the bus without having to adjust the signal timing of the rest of the intersection. And we're also considering this treatment at 96th Street and Central Park West, as well as 97th Street and 5th Avenue, where if we can, we'll put a bus only signal there, which will also create this pedestrian phase. So we'd be providing a pedestrian safety and bus priority treatment all in one. The other pedestrian safety improvements that we're proposing or studying throughout the corridor are these rubber speed bumps that I mentioned earlier, where we can place them on the center line to make left turning vehicles slow down as they approach the intersection, which is safer for pedestrians trying to cross. That's shown on the bottom right. On the top left, you can see an example of a Diller intersection with a rubber speed bump treatment to encourage cars to turn further away from the curb, which gives better visibility of the pedestrians and causes cars to slow down as they make the turn. So now I'll walk through the blocks on the west side to show you the concepts of each location in more detail, starting with 96 between West End and Broadway. So the bus lane, as you know, the bus turns around on Broadway using 97th and then comes south on West End, and the bus lane would begin after West End. With this tapered start to direct cars out of the path of the bus lane. And the bus lane begins. We have the bus stop, and then the bus lane is offset from the parking lane using this mostly typical offset bus lane design. And then we are also able to add space in the proposal for this left turn bay treatment to better organize traffic. Between Broadway and Amsterdam, it's, again, this typical offset bus lane design in the proposal. And we're also proposing a left turn ban for the in the eastbound direction. We're proposing this because their existing left turn volumes are low at the intersection, but banning that left turn would improve pedestrian safety as well as traffic flow through the intersection. Here's a map of the left turn ban proposal that I've just mentioned, and it highlights alternate routes for drivers going northbound. Between Amsterdam and Columbus, we have the typical offset bus lane design in both directions. I split it up to be able to zoom in better because it's a longer block. Between Columbus Avenue and Central Park West, the offset bus lane in the proposal would shift to the curb at intersections in order to make space for that left turn bay for left turning cars to queue, as I discussed earlier. That brings us to the end of the west side blocks, and then the bus continues on through the park and onto the east side. So to summarize, the project proposes mostly offset bus lanes. There's two curbside blocks in the east side. But on the west side, it's all offset bus lanes, which improves bus speeds and reliability throughout the corridor, as well as the turn bays, which ease congestion at intersections and better organize traffic, and also proposes pedestrian safety improvements throughout the corridor. And the next steps include continuing our outreach with the community boards and continuing project design and analysis. We are proposing a summer implementation date, and then we'd continue monitoring the project. And in the fall and the winter, we'd continue monitoring the project, and we can study any potential additional improvements for the corridor. Thank you all for listening, and now we have time for questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm so happy to see transit signal prioritization being utilized finally on the west side. We have some questions from, yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can I ask why there are no bus bulbs included in this plan?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That is something that we are not proposing in this current plan, because it's something that typically takes much more capital construction resources. So often that's not something that we can do in-house with this current program. It's something that, we have in mind and, could consider for a capital project in the future, but not in the scope of this current work.
Who's next? Go ahead.
Thank you for the proposal. It certainly sounds fantastic. Two questions. First, why is signal prioritization only on those 3 intersections? And second, approximately how many parking spaces are there between Central Park West and West End on 96th right now?
So to answer the first question about the signal, the queue jumps, that has to do with the signal timing of the avenues. So it takes a lot of, consideration of what the changes to traffic would be along the avenues. So at 3rd Avenue, there's already the pedestrian phase. So it's sort of an obvious place that we can put the bus signal in. But beyond that, it really depends on how much flexibility we have based on the volumes at the other avenues, which could potentially be, backed up too much if we touch the signal timing at those intersections. So those are the most feasible ones. The second question about, can you repeat the second question, please?
Number of parking spaces.
Oh, yes.
Between Central.
I don't have that number off of the top of my head.
Okay, Doug,
if I may actually, jump in. Hi, Phil Bethel, Deputy Director of Bus Priority, just on the question of transit signal priority. So for this project, we're actually looking to do queue jumps, which are a separate phase for the bus itself. Separately, DOT as an agency is undertaking transit signal priority. And so that is a separate type of intervention that actually holds the green light a little bit longer when the bus is arriving, or makes the green light come a little bit faster if the bus is arriving. So we're actually looking to do and on track for doing about 1,000 intersections a year across the city. So on 96th Street, we're adding these separate phases, but I believe we may have already hit 96th Street in our larger effort.
Thank you.
I think this dovetails, continuing from my colleague's previous question, in the lengthening of the bus stops. I understand, and I've seen it with my own eyes, where 2 buses, different routes, can't
and the one has to wait for the other one to pull out. What is the average length of a bus stop before lengthening it, and then what will be the final length? And I guess, you know, that relates to how many parking spaces we're gonna probably have to lose. Yeah. That's, you know, that's implied in the question, but what is it going from, and what is the final length once it's
Sure. Yeah, so those bus stops that I mentioned that are very short are about 50 or 60 feet. So we're looking at adding about 35 feet to each of those bus stops to allow, you know, both buses to arrive, which is a little under 2 parking spots at each location.
Thank you. Okay.
But-
Who's next?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're gonna try to keep this moving along because we've got a long agenda still ahead of us. Ken, go ahead.
I just wanted to echo too that this sounds really great and really equitable in many ways and very welcome and long overdue. My question is about enforcement. Right now, a lot of this route is effectively one lane because of double parking, because of our insistence on having curbside access for cars up and down the block, mostly free. I'm wondering, I'm assuming there's going to be no physical barrier keeping cars out of the bus lane for the route. So how is enforcement going to be done, and have you looked at putting in more loading zones, because inevitably people are going to have to get deliveries and there's going to be double parking, which inevitably will end up in the bus lane.
Yes. So we for offset bus lanes typically propose stationary camera enforcement, and neighborhood loading zones is something we are thinking about. But you know, if you have particular locations that you're concerned about, if you could direct those to the borough office, we can look into specific locations in more detail.
Okay.
And at some point, Ken, an M96 will have the ACE camera system in it, which will absolutely enforce the bus lane.
Okay. Jay?
I just want to make sure I understand what the result will be. So traffic coming off the West Side Highway, going west to east on 96th Street, where it now has 2 driving lanes, will now have 1. Is that correct?
Yeah. One after West End, yes.
It's with congestion pricing too.
Okay, so already a traffic disaster will become a double traffic disaster.
Yeah.
The double parking on 96th Street going west to east, and that's what I'm familiar with. Most of that double parking is utility vehicles, trucks, deliveries, and so forth. And that, you know, can't eliminate it, even with a couple of loading zones. Basically, 96th Street west to east is basically one travel lane right now. That's generally what happens, certainly during business. So this is to make it worse. My next question and my last question, and I want to understand this. Did you say you were prohibiting a left turn from 96th Street going west to east onto Amsterdam going north?
Yes.
Yes. We're proposing it, yes, and studying.
Make any sense? So you'll have everybody making a left turn where, on Central Park West?
Or Broadway.
Or Broadway, which is the worst disaster.
Okay,
My comment is that none of this makes sense.
Okay, so those aren't really questions I want an answer, but they are comments. So
I think we're allowed to comment.
I'm just letting the MTA folks off, the DOT folks off the hook for an answer on that. That is, okay. Okay, I don't see any more hands around the table. Leonard, I see you. We're gonna go, it is now 8:10. Okay, so I see this gentleman as well. Leonard, come up. Be succinct.
I'm gonna be succinct. My friend over here was correct about what he said. My name is Leonard Daniels. Before I ask my question, haven't you folks learned anything about what happened on Amsterdam?
That's not how we're going to address. Well, not how, ask your question,
Okay,
please.
my question is this. You have parking, forget about the double parking, even though he's correct about that. People have to park the cars. They're going to be blocking the bus lanes when they park the cars. I mean, I understand you people are in a different stratosphere, but you gotta have a brain. I mean, that's all.
All right, Mr. Daniels, that's not the way we speak in this room.
Well, the bottom line is.
Take your seat, please.
Answer the question, where are you gonna put people's cars? And also with biking, they're gonna bike over the speed bumps. That makes sense when you want them to go bike ride.
Gentlemen, come on up. And I see 3 hands. The question was not asked in a way in which CB7 will allow questions to be asked.
Well, maybe that's the way you gotta ask things at this point.
Thank you very much.
My name is Jane. I live in the district. 2 questions for you. I appreciate what's been done on 14th Street with the busway. Why did you choose to do an offset lane instead of a busway? Then also down on 14th Street, there's 2 protected bike lanes. I know you said in the future there'll be protected bike lanes, but down at 14th Street, there's one at 13th and one at 12th, so it doesn't cause more congestion again while on 14th. While on 92nd, 96, sorry. So that's something you're considering too. Thank you.
So for the first question about why we didn't propose a busway here, you know, the 14th Street busway works really well in that part of the city. I think, you know, the reality of 96th Street is that it is sandwiched between 2 highways. So it's every corridor is different, and offset bus lanes are probably a better way of balancing the different needs on the corridor as opposed to restricting all car traffic. And then was the other question about parallel routes for bike lanes that aren't on 96th Street?
So similar to 14th Street, there's 13th Street and 12th Street. So a consideration might be doing 95th and 94th instead of pushing it all on the 96th. If you had any thoughts yet on the protected bike lane, that's basically.
Yeah, I can't share specific thoughts on that, but DOT is looking into bicycle routes in this area that, you know, could be on streets like parallel to 96th Street. But I don't have specifics on that at the time.
Okay, I'm gonna keep us moving. Why don't you come up, ma'am? And then I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands online, and I see 2 people here, and that's gonna be it because we've got to get this meeting moving. So ma'am, please give us your name and then go right ahead.
Maxine DeSeta, long-time West Sider. My problem with the bus is that we do not have shelters. I think this is a fundamental thing. I use the bus and the subway all the time in the city, even though I own a car. And sitting in the snow and the rain with something basic like a bus shelter. What is going on here? I don't get it. And I also use the 106 that goes to Costco, where you go through a lot of poor neighborhoods. And I mean, there's just something wrong that you can't get a bus shelter on this route. I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there a response or should we keep moving?
It's Colleen from DOT. If you know of locations that you would like us to look for bus shelters, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to conduct a feasibility study.
And I will follow up on Colleen that for a while, due to contract issues, we were not able to add more bus shelters. That has been fixed, and so we are actually now across the city starting to install some new ones. So as Colleen mentioned, please do forward any specific locations. We're also doing a holistic look to add new shelters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see Deborah, is it Kirchner? Pardon my pronunciation. go right ahead, ask your question.
Okay, one question is if there would be a consideration for those kind of traffic calming rubber things that you were putting in the road for the intersection of 96 and Central Park West going north-south, specifically between the bike lane and the car lane. It's a very thick intersection there because it's both the non-car lane and the car lane at 96 and Central Park West. So cars take a very weird way that they kind of gradually go into the car lane when they're going north on Central Park West into the 96 transverse, which if they took a wider turn, it would be better for the cyclists and the intersection there. If you want me to follow up with a picture of that, I don't know if I'm explaining myself very clearly, but it'd be great if you could do more traffic calming. And just a final question is just reiterating what the other commenter said about there needs to be safer bike lane, because like you said, it's coming from, you have the Hudson River, you have Amsterdam, you have Columbus, and you have Central Park West. There's zero safe way to get between them in this space. So I appreciate that it's considering, but sooner rather than later would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
yes,
Do you have a question?
please do send along the location you're talking about with details to the borough office, and we'll look into it.
Okay, I think the way to do this is that for all of these location-specific requests, send them to the CB7 office, and we'll bundle them up and send them in one lot to DOT so that everybody gets heard. Come on up, and then the next person online after this gentleman is going to be Daniel Sutton.
Okay, so my name is Liam Jeffries. Thank you for presenting this. This looks great. You mentioned several of the benefits in your presentation. The one that was sort of briefly touched upon is that this is an important hospital access corridor from the west side, the most direct way from the west side, from this part of the west side, and also for that matter from Morningside and Hamilton Heights is 96th Street. You transfer to crosstown bus, and that takes you to Mount Sinai and Metropolitan Hospitals. So anything that can be done to improve bus speeds on this is very important just for that, because you're directly benefiting access to Mount Sinai and Metropolitan Hospitals. I also want to echo the previous comments on busway. I think this should be a busway, honestly. I know you referenced various reasons why it couldn't be a busway. You can work around those. Busways aren't strictly set things. They're honestly very malleable in terms of what you can do with them, in terms of access rules and other things like that. So if anything, I think you should at least study the possibility, because I think there are many things you can do with the busway on this corridor, and especially when it comes to cycling access and pedestrian improvements, and also for that matter delivery improvements as well, if you time it right. So I think it's worth studying. Thank you.
Okay, those are comments, not questions. So we're just going to keep moving. Thank you for those. Daniel Sutton, you're up next.
Thank you. I also support turning 96th Street into a proper busway rather than simply an offset bus lane. It reduces traffic on the streets and makes buses faster and increases safety for pedestrians. So it makes everything better without having any negatives. I live near 14th Street anyway, so that one works very, very well. So this one should be signed after that.
Sorry to cut people off, but if you're agreeing with somebody else, that's all you got to say. Thank you for that. The next person is one of the many tar babies that are online. I don't know. No, but somebody using your handle is. I know. Okay. Tar baby. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Okay. So let's keep moving. Why does that say? Oh, what happened here? What the devil? All right, now I can't see who's got a. They're going to be. Okay. Oh, here they are. Okay, thank you. Next is Catherine. Is it Nessel or Nessel? You can unmute and ask your question.
Yes, Catherine Nessel. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the comprehensive presentation. Briefly, yeah, really, this is an important corridor just for access, and appreciative of the efforts DOT is taking. Would love to see some more priority for buses, like through a busway or something, but I'm curious specifically, I know 14th Street busway has been brought up, but has DOT looked at doing a treatment similar to the Livingston Street busway in Brooklyn? I live on the Upper West Side, but work in downtown Brooklyn, and they've been around there, and that's where there's two, basically having to both bi-directional bus lanes together on one side of the street, and then on the other part, having one lane of traffic and then 1 lane of parking. Livingston Street is 80 feet, 96th Street is 100 feet. So you figure you could probably fit in like a bi-directional, just all-purpose traffic lane as well. If there's some concerns about, just travel between East and West Side for other vehicles as well, but just was wondering if that's been considered at all, and just if Livingston Street could be a model.
So that's the question. Do you have an answer there for us?
96th Street, we're very familiar with the implementation of the Livingston Street design, and we hear your comment that you like it. So thank you for that, and we'll can always continue more in the future of studying other designs for 96th Street, but this is the one that makes the most sense for this corridor at the time. So unless anybody wants to add to that.
On Livingston Street, yes, we were blessed that on the south side of Livingston, a lot of those are much larger buildings with dedicated loading docks, and so we didn't actually have to worry quite as much about parking and loading along that corridor. So all I've said is what we settled on here.
Okay, last word is going to go to Robert. Now, Robert, I know you've got like a dozen questions in the Q&A, and we're just not going to have time for all of them. So I'm going to ask you to prioritize your top 2 or 3.
No problem. The main priority is the complete lack of outreach by DOT, MTA, and CB7. We have a number of stakeholders that are going to be asking questions at tomorrow night's precinct meeting, of which they really have gotten no answers here. The main ones are, for example, we have several outpatient surgeries that have loading zones currently for their patients and ambulances in some of the areas that you guys are going to now have your, I forget how you put it, pushed over bus lanes, pardon me for just phrasing it that way. You have several restaurants that are going to have to move their outdoor, already approved by DOT, outdoor dining sheds. And the main concern is there's really been no outreach to anyone about this meeting. The other just quick thing about measurements, the crosstown bus basically is 11 feet wide. You're making the only travel lane, excluding for buses, MTA buses, you're making that a 10-foot wide lane. All the school buses, Peter Pan, Greyhound, et cetera, that use that daily have an 11-foot wide bus structure with the mirrors. You're going to have a problem there. You're going to create accidents. And there really doesn't seem to be much consideration for non-MTA buses or trucks, because this is a truck route going from the local truck route on Broadway to Columbus and Amsterdam, which are interstate truck routes. And I really don't think this was that thought out or spoken to many of the stakeholders that really need to be brought into this before you break ground and start putting in concrete. Thank you.
Thank you for being.
One last.
Thank you for being so concerned, Robert. Go ahead.
You could get some kind of response or like a contact person for the precinct for DOT at DOT, so that these questions could be, as Mark said, could be bundled all together and sent to you like as a Word document. Because I know the precinct has a question, an issue of ambulance response times, the fire department, et cetera. Thank you.
Sure. So I can answer some of those concerns. You mentioned the 10-foot travel lane. That is standard for general travel lanes throughout the city. That we do that all the time, and we have modeled for truck movements, and also you bring up buses that aren't MTA buses. All buses can use the bus lane, so that's something that also benefits, as you mentioned, school buses and others. So just wanted to address that. But thank you. It's good to hear the concerns, and just any other specific questions or comments can, like you said, be sent to the DOT Manhattan office.
Yeah, and it's Colleen from DOT. With a lot of our safety improvement projects, we work very closely with NYPD and with FDNY to review our designs. And just so you know, going back going about with the NYC dining program, a lot of the structures have to be removed. Under the permanent program, it's going to be movable tables and chairs. It's not going to be the sheds that you see out there anymore. So we're more than happy to work with you to address any concerns that you have, okay?
Thank you. All right, that's all the time we have for this item. We thank you very much for the presentation. We're gonna bundle up questions that we get. Jessie, if you can make a copy of what's in the Q&A for us, so that we can sit through that offline, so that we can try to come up, and then we'll keep that list open for a couple of days so that we can receive anything that the community council wants to share with us as well. And then Andrew and I will put that together in some kind of letter with the chair's assistance and support. So that's all the time we have for this item. Thank you very much. We're going to keep moving to a presentation. We're at item 3 on our agenda. This is a presentation by Tag Gross.
Can we limit this to 10 minutes, Mark?
There's more?
There's lots
I mean,
more.
there's like half a dozen subjects on the next 2 items that could take an hour each. Why they were all put together is beyond me.
Well,
in one meeting.
That's a topic for another time, not in front of the children.
I think it's a topic for now.
Is there a deadline by which we have to end, like there is when we're at other venues?
No, but maybe we don't want to be here all night, Howard,
Yeah.
come on.
Well,
And
I'm asking, this is the answer, I'm not aware of one. The agenda got put together in a variety of ways, and that's a conversation we can have, but not right now.
We can limit this.
Yeah, so Tag.
I emailed Andrew, and I know it's getting late and I feel guilty because I'm sick and sitting on my couch instead of being with you all. And I mean, I'd be happy to defer, to the next meeting because it is really late and the work you guys put in, et cetera. I mean, it's up to you though. I'm at your disposal and will accommodate whatever you want.
I'm inclined to take you up on that unless there's somebody around the table who tells me I'm stupid. All right.
And I think you'll feel better in a month and you'll be able to come in person.
And we will, and I do think that being in person is better. So I'm going to say thank you very much for that.
Too comfortable for this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tag.
All right. So now let's go on to item 4 on our agenda. It is Renee with us, either online or in person. There's Renee. Okay, I thought you didn't meet before. Let's make some room for Renee to come up to the table so that we can hear Renee. Do you have a presentation that you're going to share?
Yes, I'll go get Jessie.
Oh, Jessie has it. Okay.
I don't have the board.
So Mark Diller, it's Colleen Chattergoon. You're not stupid, you're brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Jessie.
My late mother would agree. I'm not sure anybody else would. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, let's okay, it is 8:30. Let's come together.
I will do my level best.
So your presentation is up, yes?
A lot of folks have asked about this topic due to congestion pricing coming, and over the years have asked about it. Many other community boards have asked about it, and so thanks to Jami, we have a pretty much of an expert on the topic. So wonderful.
I don't know how much expertise I can offer, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the subject to you. Every other major city does have residential parking permits. This includes London, which is the place, of course, that has congestion pricing and has made it work. One of the reasons they have made it work is because of their residential parking permit system. Their residential parking permit systems, not only in major cities, but minor ones. There's one in Yonkers. There's one in Rye, in Westchester. There's one in Hoboken. There's one, you name it. Every other place has a residential parking system in parts of their cities or villages. So right now, who can park on our streets? Answer? Yep, that's it. Come in from New Jersey, come in from Westchester, come in from, or for whatever reason, Vancouver, I've seen those too. I see routinely on my block, a place in Texas. But, oh yes. But I've done it I'm gonna call it an informal survey. 20% of the cars on our streets on the Upper West Side have license plates from out of state. Okay, that doesn't mean that there aren't more plates or more vehicles that are registered in Westchester, in Suffolk, in Nassau, and half the time when some car is registered in New York State, I look and there's a Southampton Beach parking sticker on there. So anyway, my informal survey, which is just counting the cars, found that 20% are out of state. Beyond that, I can't comment because I don't have registration records. I don't have access to DMV. Many New York automobile owners do avoid income taxes and high insurance rates by registering their cars elsewhere.
Those Vermont plates.
Car ownership is an indicia of residency, just as voting is. And car registration is frequently out of state. That means that people who register their cars out of state almost invariably also do not pay income taxes in our city. Without access to records, I can't give you any precise data, but this is observation only. And I'm sure you could make your own observations. Okay, how would we even implement it? How does that work? First of all, you can't do it just with the city. I am very sorry to say, you've got to have New York State come along. New York State has jurisdiction over every road, every public road in the entire state. Authorizing legislation by the state is necessary, but it's routinely passed when it's requested by the locality. Legislation, what we would do in the city as to whether it would be by regulation or whether it would be by a specific statute in the city, would be determined by the state legislation. The state legislation would specify New York City by ordinance shall regulate parking, blah, 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 right? Or they could say, New York City may pass such regulations as may be necessary to. The legislation is really the key to it. But that legislation, while it has a long checkered history. What is the history of this? Why has this never passed in New York? We'll get to that. But first, let's go to how long we've been considering it, or it has been considered by various legislators. It was first proposed in 2001 by Mayor Bloomberg when he first brought up congestion pricing, because he knows London. That's why. Then in 2018, a New York City Council bill was jointly sponsored by Mark Levine and Yaruss Rodriguez when they were members of City Council. You may say, odd combo. Why is that? Because the upper part of Manhattan is besieged with people who come over the George Washington Bridge and from Westchester and then take the subway. The residents of Upper Manhattan have had it up to here, and there are constant proposals from that part of our borough to have this happen. There have been numerous bills in Albany, especially in recent years with congestion pricing looming. There is one that is still on the table. It is in the the Transportation Committee of the Assembly. It was proposed by Assemblymember O'Donnell. It has been referred to the Transportation Committee, as I said, and if you would like to write to Mr. O'Donnell with respect to this bill, it is number 80784.
Assembly member O'Donnell hasn't, he's not running for real.
Okay.
I recognize that.
Better wait till after the election.
It was raised in 2011 by Daniel's squadron. He proposed it. It is now being forwarded by two city council members, Lynn Schulman, who it represents an area in Queens, Kew Gardens, as well as Carmen de la Rosa, who represents Washington Heights and Inwood. In Kew Gardens, their problem is that people come in from Long Island, they park there, and then they take the subway in.
Actually, I thought, not to interrupt you, but I thought Jamaica Estates and the first stop on the F, 179th and Hillside would be where they would be demanding parking permits, because so many Long Islanders go there because you get a seat and you get an express train. And
I do not know, but I do know that in that area of the city, there's considerable off-street parking as well. So they're not as dependent on street parking.
With the big driveway there.
they have that.
Vandervliet.
Long Island.
Okay, let's please go on. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
so what, we're up to this. So why don't we have one? Okay, there's been, wait a minute. No.
We can go back to
Let's go
slide,
to
please.
slide.
Other direction, please.
Back to, dramatic.
Slide 7, please. Why don't we have a parking permit?
There we go, there we go, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, why not? Lobbying by interested parties. And there are a lot of interested parties, but they all have money. And needless to say, I don't have it. Since it has been first proposed by Mayor Bloomberg.
It's tremendous amount of support from the community. See, much more powerful than mine.
Thank you. Since it's.
Okay, come on, folks, let's stay together. I know it's late. Let's go.
It's, so as you can see, it's been championed by many officials over many years. As I also mentioned, numerous other towns and cities in New York State have residential parking permit areas, Yonkers, Rye, Albany. You name it, they've got, but we don't. The Brewer study that was conducted in 2018 was really inconclusive, not determinative, and had no data on street parking in New York City at all, and didn't access DMV records. So, you know, I shouldn't say it, garbage in, but. Okay, what are the benefits of a residential parking permit system?
Slide, please.
Next slide, please. Slide number, can't read it, 8. Okay, thank you. What are the benefits? First of all, there's revenue. The most expensive permitted parking in the United States happens to be in San Francisco. For those of you who are interested in such things, which of course has LA does too. All these, you know, all these cities have. Think of every city in the world. They've got it. You know, we're the only ones. The only ones. Pittsburgh has it. Philadelphia has it. You know. I don't know how much the revenue is, but I do know that in San Francisco, which at the time that I was reading this report was the most expensive, was $60 a month.
We don't think that
it does reduce the number of cars competing on alternate side streets. It can reduce the carbon footprint of parkers, specifically has been cited in every bill that's been introduced. In some of these cities, the amount you pay for the parking permit is determined by the nature and amount of hydrogen fuel that you use. So you would, for instance, I think it's in, I get confused, whether it's Paris, London, or Amsterdam, I cannot remember. But in one of those cities, if you have a 6-cylinder car, you get charged the most. They don't even have 80 cylinders there. I can imagine it. If you have a 4-cylinder, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, if you have an electric car, it's the least of all. So such a system, at least as I envision it, would guarantee anyone a parking space. It would only be a hunting license, which is essentially what everybody has now, which means people who aren't residents, but residents only would have that hunting license. It would encourage income tax payment. You want to park your car on the street? Good, pay your income taxes. And it would also enable W-2 workers to more easily commute to their jobs. I know there are a lot of doormen that commute from long distances. They live far out. They have to add an hour onto each shift so that they can find a parking space. So it's disgraceful.
When you say would encourage income tax payments, the inference is in order to participate in a residential parking permit, it would have to be a New York State license.
It would have to be a New York City residential declaration.
So people are gonna move, people are gonna move from the suburbs into that area so they can get a resident. I mean, how is that gonna encourage income tax?
The people, there are many people, I'm gonna talk about personal experience.
Please go on.
At one point, I had a weekend place in Columbia County. Many, in fact, most of my neighbors who were weekenders there declared that as their primary residence so that they would not pay New York City taxes and so that they would vote there because they felt their vote counted more up there. But nonetheless, that is one of the ways. So these are all good. Last slide. Hello?
Last slide, please. Thank you.
Okay. All good reasons for a pilot program before this happens.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay.
So before we take comments, do you know the status of any bills that are pending in the legislature to approve this for any districts in the city of New York yet?
I only know about that single bill that I discussed, and it has been referred to the Transportation Committee. The Transportation Committee would require a hearing, but there has been no hearing scheduled. My assumption is it's going to die in committee because the legislature disbands, as you probably know.
But it can be reintroduced.
It can be, of course.
Okay, we're gonna go around, do the same thing. We're gonna go around the table and we'll take some comments from the room. And some questions from the room. I'm gonna take chair privilege and ask the first, which is, am I correct that there is existing state legislation that limits the amount that a residential parking program can charge to the administrative cost of running the program? I'm pretty sure that's correct, but have you run across that?
I have not.
Okay, so the idea of revenue generation may be simply an offset as opposed to.
That's my understanding as well, Mark.
Yeah, I think so, okay.
I've heard that too.
So now, of course, all of it's subject to legislation that could be changed, but now you've got two bills you have to pass instead of one.
Oh,
It
it can be
bill, but
put
yes,
in
that
a
would need to be
single
changed as well.
It
Okay.
can be put in a single bill.
And in terms of volume of parking, and
Yes.
it is an interesting thing that currently DOT does not have a tool to measure how much parking is in a particular area. There was a study done in another part of Manhattan, which posited a way to do that. And hopefully we'll be able to capitalize on that with thanks to the funds of the city of New York for sponsoring the first research. Okay. But if I'm hearing you correctly, the cars that are parked in our neighborhoods that have either out of state or out of district residences are people who actually live here
Yeah.
And so the cars wouldn't disappear if we enacted residential parking. They would simply have to re-register in order to qualify for the program.
They
Is
would-
that
They would either have to re-register or they would have to find garage space.
Find what?
Garage space.
some other way to park? Okay.
Right.
Okay, I've talked enough, we're gonna go around the table, let's start with Ken, and then we'll just make a circle.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. Yeah, residential parking permits are a very compelling idea. On its face, they seem to make a lot of sense, but just speaking about the Upper West Side, we have about 12,300 free on-street parking spaces and 220,000 residents. You mentioned so demand far outstrips supply. And essentially what's gonna happen, and Rachel, you know who Rachel Weinberger is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, she's the one who came up with the hunting license metaphor.
Yes.
That, she says that it's not gonna change anything, it's just going to give people who hold the permit the privilege of paying for what they're already doing now, which is circling the block, looking for a space, or double parking, doing street cleaning. And so, you know, it's kind of a myth that this is really gonna help anything. And also Donald Shoup, who came to our committee in March, said the same thing essentially. And his other comment was, how are you going to fairly distribute these 12,300 permits to, 12,000, well, not 200,000 people in cars, but anyway, there's a lot more cars. And then the other unintended consequence is what, the curbside is used for all kinds of other uses, business uses, restaurants, delivery people, the tradesmen, people who come to work in houses.
It's a workforce aspect.
Right, there's a huge workforce.
That's built into it, that's what she's talking about.
Okay, but I don't understand how that's built.
I said it would be for residents and for W-2 type workers.
What's that?
Yeah.
In a W-2 type
That was one of my questions.
not a 1099 worker, it is someone who is more than casually employed. In other words,
As a 1099 worker, I'm gonna challenge that as something.
Yeah, and if you're a handyman that live in a transportation desert, the building itself can apply for the building owner, or the co-op, or it can apply for a residential permit for those folks, and they use them when they're working.
Okay. Let's go back to around the table. Let's not have a private conversation.
I'd like to add one thing.
Please.
I myself do not any longer own a car.
Okay.
For reasons that I won't go into, but I do not own a car. And I think most people, in fact, I know that most people also do not own a car. So it's kind of a fallacious discussion to say that of the 220,000 residents, they're all going to be looking for parking places. I don't believe that is even close to the number of residents that would even apply.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in here real quick because Ken posited a number. I'm gonna take it at face value that there are 12,000, give or take, parking
That's Donald
spaces.
Shoup.
Donald Shoup's number. Okay, so great. And there are 200 and something thousand residents, and the slides we saw earlier said that 25% of us own cars, and I'm not one of them. So that's still 50,000 people and 12,000 spaces. I think that was the point that was being offered.
Yeah.
It was not in my deck,
Okay,
the 25%.
but I think that's a pretty fair number. I've seen that number before. Sorry to jump in. I keep doing this. I'll stop. We're going, yeah.
I believe 25% refers to citywide. I don't believe.
No, that's not.
No, that's all good.
I think we have local statistics, yeah. Okay. This is not the first time we've discussed this topic around this table.
Sorry, it was not.
Not at all, not at all. This is great. We're very grateful for your coming and bringing this to us. We're gonna keep going around the table. Ken, now Howard,
Oh, that, that 12,000 number is pretty accurate. You had a pretty good assistant help him come up with it. In any event, I could sum up my comments in one word, actually: retail. Our retail corridors are suffering terribly. And I think it's critically important for people to be able to drive into the city, to go to a restaurant, to go to a shop. And again, they're suffering terribly. And if we have residential parking permits, it's going to whack them even harder. So I think it's critical to our neighborhood and the economic vibrancy of our neighborhood. Have the ability for people to come in who are not resident, park, spend some money and leave.
They can also spend money in garages and at meters.
Okay, so at this point, all right, at this point, I'm going to invite you to, we'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give you a chance to respond. I can't think. After we go all the way around the table, rather than one-on-one, okay? Yeah. So anybody else around the table? How about Doug? I see.
Well, this has been discussed for a very long time, and I hear it's a very polarizing issue, and excuse me, and so personally, I hear a lot of projections as to what will happen or not, and I've never heard. I mean, the only way to really know if something works or not is to test it. So this is just one person saying that I'd be in support of a pilot program in a limited grid to see if it works. That's just, because to say that it's never going to work and it's not going to be effective, and there is some revenue. There's also revenue and we're not supposed to be making money from ticketing people, but the fact is that if people that without permits are parking in permit zones, let's be real. Parking violations is a huge part of revenue for the city, and it always has been. Whether we talk about the equitable distribution of parking, it is a revenue source for the city.
I'd like to add one more fact, not a comment, but a fact to the presentation. And that is that Community Board 9 in March passed a resolution requesting residential permit parking in their district, and they sent it to the city council. They have not heard anything.
Well, while you're on presentation, you have to go to the state, but okay.
Yes, but
Adam? Oh, Carey, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Sure. To clarify your response to Howard's question, is it correct that with regards to people that are not residents of the district, that the proposal would be for them just to use either garage or metered spaces? And the second question is, do you have or are you familiar with data one way or the other regarding how many people there are that potentially drive into the district to patronize retail establishments?
no. No is the answer to your first question. And secondly, you can actually structure this in, I'm not supposed to answer now.
Go right ahead.
You're, sorry.
Sorry, please, go ahead.
You can structure this in whichever way you want it. For example, you could say that, from until 7:30 in the evening, it's residential parking only. You could structure it in whatever way you want it. I mean, there are numerous different structures that you can see in different cities.
Okay, let's keep going. Carey, are you done?
I was just going to ask a brief follow-up, and if the answer is no, that's fine. Are you familiar with the best practice? Were there any reference principles by which you're familiar as to what is most effective for balancing retail and stuff?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Adam.
When I talked to my grandfather about this, he talks about how growing up there was no on-street parking until he was in his 20s, I guess. So I think that rethinking our streets and rethinking how we allocate on-street parking, there's always an opportunity to do that. So thank you for coming. I think that continuing to explore a resident parking permit idea could be very useful.
Where's your grandfather from?
93rd and Central.
Because I grew up in this district.
There was no one could keep their car on the street at full of it.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. We're gonna go around. I spoke. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Yeah. Are you? Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
These words I never thought I'd hear coming out of my mouth, but I agree with Howard. And has raised some very interesting issues that give me pause. So.
Okay. And we've been joined by Andrew Rigie. Thank you for being here and
I apologize for getting here now. But
okay.
better late than
You're here.
It is indeed. It works for all of us. Okay, I see a couple of hands raised on screen. Are there any in the room? There are. We're gonna go this way this time. So, and we're gonna alternate back and forth. So Mr. Daniels, come up. And then we're gonna unmute. Robert Johnson, are you, raising your hand for this, or is that a leftover hand?
Yes. Yes, I'm in reference to this project also.
Okay, great. So hold tight. You'll be next.
I got a couple of questions that tie into one another. Maybe if taxes were lower, people would register here. Okay, second of all, the garages are very expensive. If you have somebody who lives in the island or Westchester or New Jersey who wants to visit a relative who doesn't have much in the way of money, and they're already paying $15 here, they shouldn't have to pay $60 to park their car in a garage. And how about giving us our parking back instead of the endless construction, instead of the no parking just because? I mean, that's not, I know you're just over the permits. If a permit system's going to work, you have to have assigned spaces, and we already pay enough in taxes. So that should be out of, that shouldn't even be, that's an elitist kind of thing for somebody like you who says you don't have much in the way of money. Neither do I. Okay, the bottom line is people have cars for different reasons. I travel to different jobs in transit deserts. Okay, when I come home, because of what they're doing in this neighborhood, I got to spend 2 hours looking for a space. Then I got to get up to sit in my car for an hour and a half to worry about getting ticketed when the truck doesn't even come to clean the street. So I agree with Howard also, which is surprising in terms of that. Okay, anyway, bottom line is we need to get our parking back. Wall this side needs to be reduced. And that's what Mr. Diller, my friend here, should be advocating for. Hopefully that justification won't happen. But the bottom line is we need to get our parking spaces back. And maybe more. We already paying our tax.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to Robert Johnson online, and then there'll be a hand over here. Why don't you come on up when you're ready? Robert, go ahead.
Yes, I'm on, okay. I didn't see you say unmute me, but thank you. Just a couple of quick questions / comments. On-street parking, my inner nerd is going to show here, was only allowed after 1956 and should continue to do so. Having had personal experience with resident parking permits in Beacon Hill and Boston, I can tell you the neighborhood of people who live there hate them as they do in London because nobody ever moves their cars, so you can never find a spot. The streets are not cleaned properly because the cars are never moved. And the one thing that this lady with has a great and well-researched presentation is that you're not taking into account college students which don't have an income, and more importantly, we have a very large elderly population in this neighborhood, and most of those people would not be covered under, say, 1099 or W-2 reporting. And also, I can definitely guarantee you that if you tried to do it that way, you would have everybody from the ACLU to NAACP suing you like crazy. Just one last quick comment or question about the issue you mentioned about garages. There was for a while a requirement for many neighborhoods, including ours, where a building over a certain size or density had to have a garage. The mayor is basically putting a stop to that finally. So it's going to go through because you're not going to get development in certain areas without it. So it's something to consider. But the mainstay is that she's correct. There are people, and it makes sense because of the ridiculous taxes and insurance rates. They have a house on Long Island or in the Poconos, or grandma lives in Metuchen, New Jersey. They register the car out there. That's the reason you're seeing those out-of-state plates here. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. One quick correction, and that is that the obligation under the zoning resolution to have accessory parking has been suspended in community boards 1 through 8 since 1980.
The mayor is actually putting language in that's going to take that out permanently.
Well, he's going to take it out in Queens and Brooklyn and other places, but that's.
And of course, cars registered on Long Island would still have a New York State.
Yes, okay, all right. Let's see. So after Robert, we have this person. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Allison.
Come on up. Be a little closer, just because it helps with the audio.
No one's ever said they can't hear my voice. Thank you very much. I thought you did a great presentation, but a lot of the questions that you people are answering
are to show how in the dark you are about alternate side of the street parking. I was a resident of Washington DC for 7 years. Alternate side of the street, residential parking means that if you live in the neighborhood, you are given the privilege to park on the street. It doesn't mean you don't move your car for street cleaning. In Washington DC, they clean the streets twice a week. It is just like they do it here in New York City. With respect to retailers suffering, in most of these cities, you are given a 2-hour grace period. Please come and park. You're welcome to park for 2 hours. Please come and take advantage of the shops, and then you can go back. But the truth is, many of our local Bluestone Lane and Bagels and Co. and the retail streets that we're talking about don't survive on people crossing the George Washington Bridge. Do you know what I mean? They survive on an incredibly densely populated Upper West Side. Without our business, they won't survive. So thank you for your work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's unmute Andrew Rosenthal. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I've done it.
Andrew.
Thank you very much. Listen, I have a car which I flip around alternate side and would love a resident permit if I believed it would do any good. It will not. And the numbers here are simply different than every single example that you gave has a population density. It's all about numbers. And the population density on the Upper West Side is multiples of every example you gave. The number of people per square mile in the Upper West Side is 136,000. DC is 11,000. And you could go on and on. London is 14,000 across the city. The math does not work. So there would be probably a couple months, maybe even 12 months after this was implemented, until such time as people who don't have cars decide, hey, it's a little easier now. I think the only thing that prevents more than 25% of the Upper West Siders from owning cars is the difficulty of parking. And so there's a natural balance which is occurring today, and that will be adjusted slightly in the favor of residents against non-residents, and you'll end up with the same circling the block 5 years from now or 2 years from now. 12 months after it's implemented, you're back to the same thing. The only thing that's keeping the system in balance is the difficulty of finding a spot. So listen, this is just kind of like a cult. You guys all believe in it, but it's not true.
All right, let's not characterize things that way, but thank you for that. Thank you for that. I see you. Sir, why don't you come on up and give us your name?
Okay, my name is Rob Bullington. I'm a long-term local resident here in the Upper West Side. I'm also one of the odd reverse commuters. That means I live here up in the community because I like to live here and I work in New Jersey. So I have a car and I drive daily to New Jersey and then I come back. So, you know, this is dear to my heart and I appreciate everything you're doing for this. My question is has there been any studies done from the city or anyone as to what effect parking will suffer after the
congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing.
No.
Starting next month.
Can I comment on that?
Sure. And then I think
The MTA has decided that they're going to do a study on that after implementation of congestion pricing, not before. Firstly. Secondly, I'd like to explain in addition that the garages have already taken congestion pricing into account. You could park monthly below the congestion zone for much less than you could park at the Upper West Side.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for your comment and question. I have another Tarvidi online. And I'm going to allow that person who raised his or her hand to unmute and please give us your real name.
Hello?
Yeah, that's you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I shouldn't be Tar Baby. I should come up as my name, which is Jami Nelson. I wanted, my name's Jami Nelson. I'm actually from Community Board 7. And, oh, sorry. Yeah, I did not do that. I don't know how that happened. So I'm from Community Board 7 in Brooklyn, actually. I'm on the transportation committee there. We are considering residential parking as well. And I actually wanted to just maybe help with a couple of numbers here. As of October 2023, actually there were over 2.2 million personal cars registered in New York City. And that only accounts for the ones that are registered here in New York City. So even if, you were to pay, we were actually playing around with the idea of perhaps a registration fee, just doing numbers at $50 a vehicle for every 6 months. That's over $110 million in potential revenue just for New York City. And actually, we were proposing the program to work a different way, in that every 6 months, someone would have to present their registration and proof of insurance to their New York City address, rather than making them, someone who's paying New York City taxes. So that would deal with the students. It would deal with elderly. And essentially what that would do is it would also help drive down insurance prices in New York City, because folks would be forced to actually insure their cars in the city. So we'd have more people insured in New York City. I think in addition, it would help to reduce traffic. New York City drivers on average spend 107 hours a year looking for parking spots, which in fact, 107 hours per year looking for a parking spot. That adds up to about $2,200 in average in wasted time, fuel, and emissions per driver. Plus, it ends up costing New York City itself about $4.3 billion overall, when you take into account all of the health problems that come along with all of the extra smog and whatnot. But in addition, right, it not only does it discourage car ownership, it would also lead to cleaner streets, the cleaner air. It encourages more use of the MTA, the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and PATH at a time when the ridership is still at an all-time low. Non-city residents commute in, particularly in Brooklyn and the outer boroughs, via car on a daily basis, and they park in the residential neighborhoods. So they take the space from the actual residents, and they also they litter, they create the unnecessary pollution. And reality, it makes for an unfamily friendly environment. And so really what we're doing is we're pushing, pardon?
I'm just gonna ask you to wrap up, please.
Sure. And I also was going to say, there's extra revenue to be made from selling weekend permits to people who are visiting. It's enforcement is as simple as scanning a barcode. That's how they do it in Miami. They actually will sell 2 or 3 day permits for people who are visiting family, obviously at a much higher rate. But you can get a temporary quote unquote hunting license. And that in and of itself leads to additional revenue for the city. So
got it. Okay, thank you. Liam is here. Come on up. What board in Brooklyn are you with?
Well, I'm with Community Board 7, actually.
I love your district manager. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe again, just a very simple question, because you mentioned a whole bunch of at least in my opinion, anecdotal evidence to back up points. Is there like any actual physical data or evidence that can be traceable that the claims you're making are accurate?
No, as I said, it's informal survey, and I did it by just counting cars. And I have all the numbers, but on 80th between West End and Central and Riverside, where it's things like that. I do not have access to the DMV record.
I'm just thinking that there should be part data to back up anything that we're.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Thanks very much. And the last word is going to go to Peter Post online. I'm asking you to unmute. Oh, and then one more here. Oh, it's you too? Okay.
Yeah,
all right, that'll be it. Okay.
I have a question. If they give you a residential permit, is it good for just my street, or is it good for an area of a 5-block radius, or what?
Those are the way that they usually work is that there's a zone, and what the contours of the zone would obviously be a big part of the discussion of how this would come together. Thanks.
Because this relates to my question about, let's say there are more cars than permits available. Is it going to be like the airlines overbooking? They assume that a lot of people aren't going to. They assume a lot of people isn't going to show up, and then all of a sudden everybody shows up and there's no parking.
We're pretty confident that there are going to be more parkers than spaces. That's a fair assessment. Yeah. Okay. That was the hunting license part of the presentation. Why don't you come on up? Thanks very much for joining us.
Maxine DeSeta, longtime New Yorker. And we pay the highest taxes in the United States. Let's start there. And then any kind of permit is gonna have to cost us more and not guarantee us any parking, where in the meantime, we are taking away parking with sheds and city bikes and anything else we can think of to deprive people of parking. And our relatives and our friends come to visit. I mean, it's already hard to get parking, and it's gonna be a Byzantine structure that you're gonna have to set up for these permits. I mean, we don't even tax people who buy a luxury unit in a building the correct amount if they stay, what is it, 180 days or something in the city. They don't have to pay tax. There's some structure.
It's an IRS rule.
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
kind of.
Is that, I'm sorry, okay. And as far as pollution, it's our buildings, folks, 70% of our buildings are, 70% of the pollution is from our buildings. You cannot get much pollution from a parked car. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And the last word's gonna go to Steve Anderson.
Very, very quickly, because a lot of other places do it, doesn't mean that we should do it. It doesn't mean we should ignore it. My family lived in London for many years. We had a home, we had residential parking permit. It worked. Was it perfect? No. The little village of Cold Spring, New York, in Putnam County, where I have a home there, we've just instituted residential parking. So there's ways to do this. We are being asked all the time this question: are we going to allow the Upper West Side and maybe the Upper East Side to become the largest outdoor parking lots in New York City with congestion pricing? The question: where are the answers? We need better answers. This may be one of them. But where's the discussion about how we're going to cope in our community? Where's the dialogue? Where's the research? Where's the study? This is not some new idea that someone came up with. And the idea that we should turn to the state to help us on this, like they did with the cannabis program. What a really great rollout. And now they're going to take care of the e-bikes at Caputo. My friends, this is a topic we need to talk about. We need more answers, and we need to be proactive about this because it's all happening right here in the place we love.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. And thank you, Renee, for not only making a fine presentation but for sticking your neck out in the hostile, the competitive world of union before. It's really terrific that you brought this to us, and we're grateful for it. Obviously, this is a discussion that needs a lot more data. It needs a lot more consideration, and will be ongoing. And since the chair of the board is with us, I'm going to lob in a thought that if the fund for the city of New York offers us the opportunity to have a graduate fellow for research next year, this might be a topic that we should lob into our friend Alvin Bonilla to request. I know there'll be a lot of different requests from a lot of committees. We're just sort of throwing that out here. I'm required to ask for new business. No, okay. So I think we'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and we thank everybody online as well as in the room.